The Frighteners, for some reason, has like this hold on my heart from the 90s.
As it should.
There's a quote, and I don't want to misquote it. So Jeffrey goes, "You're violating my personal territorial bubble." That quote. Like,
yeah.
When I taught daycare, I would literally be like, "You're in my bubble." Like, that was the first time I had heard that term. And I used it to teach kids about personal space.
Oh,
so that came from the Frighteners.
I'm sure he would be very glad to know that he's had an effect on the American educational system in some way.
Yes.
That movie was also, and I've mentioned it on the podcast before, but it was the first thing I ever saw Jeffrey Combs in. I saw it when I was like 14 or something, because I was a big Michael J. Fox fan at the time.
Yes.
And I was trying to watch all of Michael J. Fox's movies at the time. And that character really just stayed with me for like years afterwards. Like when I first watched Reanimator, I went, that guy looks familiar. And I realized that the Milton character had stayed with me all those years because it's such a powerful, weird, interesting character. And
he's just such a good character actor. Like he morphs into whatever role he's given.
Because the deciding factor I've realized on whether or not people have seen Jeffrey Combs in many films is whether or not you like horror movies, because that is the vast majority of his work. So when I've tried to explain who he is to people that don't know, I'm like, do you watch horror movies? You probably won't know unless you're also into Star Trek.
So I'm not in any of those pools. I'm not a Trekker. I've been trekked to some Star Trek movies by both Jackie and her father in the past, and I tend to yell at the screen. I am the stereotypical Black person at the movie.
They need to be told they're doing the wrong thing. They're going up the stairs when they should be going out the front door.
It boggles my mind that Black people die first in these damn movies, because no way, we're not going to be in those situations in the first place. It's never in our DNA whatsoever to say, I'm going to go open that door. Or, I heard a sound, I'm going to go check on it. No, it's not what we're doing.
Well, what's that Dave Chappelle bit where he's like, white people in a haunted house, and they're like, I'd better investigate. It's like, no.
I love that.
Assume it's bad and get out. Well, Jackie, Danielle from No More Late Fees podcast, welcome to Reanimates.
Oh, thank you so
Thanks
much
for having us.
I'm excited because I listened to the first No More Late Fees episode I listened to was your Can't Hardly Wait episode, which spoke to me as, a dyed in the wool Seth Green fan.
Absolutely.
It was definitely a movie that I knew fucking off by heart when I was 13.
His character is, I think anybody who thinks of that movie, that is the character you think about. Everybody else was good, but like above and beyond, his character was just forefront of your mind.
Because it's such a specific type of person. Like, we all knew someone like that at that age.
Yep.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And to think like it wasn't written for him. It was written for Breckin Myers, and he had to forego that movie because he was working on another project.
Yeah. Honestly, if I was going to think of another person who could do it, I think it would be Breckin Meyer. I could also see Jamie Kennedy probably doing it too.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So when we were looking through the list of movies, as soon as we saw Seth Green, we were like, we can stop looking. We found the movie.
Yeah. And perfect crossover episode.
Yes.
It's so funny because Jackie and I worked at Blockbuster, and I always remember the cover of the movie. I just never knew what it was about or had an inkling to say I wanted to see it. But I remember,
it's a very, very striking cover.
Yeah. And the cover does not tell us a damn thing about the
movie.
Now that we've seen it.
No. So the movie we're doing today is The Attic Expeditions, or also known as Horror in the Attic, from 2001. Even though I would not have called it from the outset a complex film, I was pretty confused.
Same.
Yeah.
I need a MapQuest map to help me get through.
Print it out.
Yep.
There were so many times when I was just like, wait, is this a fantasy or a regression? Are we back in the past? Are we in the future? Are we nowhere? Like, I just couldn't, but we'll get to that.
Yes.
I think I went into this movie and I just said, make it to the end, Danielle. And that was my hyper focus. And I did not question where they were, what was going on. I just said, make it to the end. And maybe there will be some, I just some
closure.
There was going to be closure. Not even hoped or thought. I said, I know when I get to the end of this movie, all of this will be explained.
Kind of.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it was directed by Jeremy Kasdan, who is more often than not an editor than a director. I don't know what that says about his directorial style. In terms of directorial roles in connection to Jeffrey, especially, he also did the 2007 Wizard of Gore film, which is pretty fun. He also did 2005's All Souls Day, which is not as fun. But and he's Jeffrey Combs is also quite a small role in that. He also did something, and this was the most notable thing I found on Jeremy Kasdan's IMDb. He did something called Death of a When Wet, which is, quote, a musical retelling of Arthur Miller's classic play Death of a Salesman, using music and lyrics from Bon Jovi's Slippery When Wet album.
How did we arrive there? I'm thinking like my psychedelics have to be involved somehow.
It's like
listening to Slippery When Wet on shrooms, and then he just has this epiphany that this movie has to happen.
My God.
I don't know. Maybe Jeremy Kasdan sees more in the music of Bon Jovi than I do. Maybe I just don't get Bon Jovi. I'm sorry. Wow. It's actually Bon Jovi is actually he's a really deep songwriter. I think you just don't understand his lyrics, you know. I mean, the way he talks about the story of a cowboy, it's so relatable. Because I too am wanted dead or alive in so many ways.
Exactly. We should write our own musical.
I think why the hell not? Everybody else has done it.
Yep.
Poorly.
I'm gonna write a retelling of The Crucible using the music and lyrics of Incubus.
Nice.
Love it.
Yep.
Nice.
I can't wait.
Yep.
It's interesting that he is an editor, because some of the visual choices that he made, like the very poor visual effects where it turned negative, like it would flash negative and then back. And then his reverse shots, I felt like were very choppy in places. Danielle gets on me all the time because I notice these things.
Drop that film school knowledge on them people, Jackie.
It's the only time I get to use my degree, Danielle.
I'm not mad at it, because I'm like, we're watching a movie and she's like giving me all this insight, or she'll say, did you see this? I said, I saw a pretty picture. What did you see?
Yeah,
it was just it was interesting, and more so now to know that he's an editor and probably had a lot of input, if not editing the film as well, that he made some of the choices that he made.
Some of the choices would have also just been what people were doing at the time. It's kind of like it's kind of like when you watch, I rewatched the first Saw movie recently, which is an absolute time capsule for like that period of filmmaking and also like music video making, because it looks like a fucking new metal video. But yeah, so it's you know, people jump onto like trends of what's happening at the time, and you know, 20 years down the line they don't look as good, but they might have been interesting when it was being made. So it was written by Rogan Russell Marshall in his screenwriting debut, one of only 2 screenwriting credits as well.
There was a little bit of failure to launch there.
I know a podcast called Failure to Launch. Look, there's a lot of problems with this script, but I think at the heart of it, there is a good idea somewhere.
Agreed. I felt the same way. It gave me very Cube vibes at points where it's that ensemble and you don't know what everyone's motive is and they all have their different quirks and things like that. It could have been a really good like psychological thriller, and it just went so many places and the roads led nowhere.
It had too much on its plate.
Yes.
I think the problem was that they needed to make a decision. And the decision was, are we making this a psychological thriller about just the mind and how the mind plays games and whatever? Or are we making a movie about witchcraft?
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. So there was a lot of irons in the fire in this one, but
yeah.
Well, let's get into it. So we open on a lot of medical imagery, you know, spooky IV drip, man getting an injection. Oh, he's getting his head shaved. It's also mostly the head shaving. Like that's meant to be the spookiest part. And pretty soon we're introduced to our protagonist, Trevor, played by Andras Jones from Nightmare on Elm Street 4, if you're familiar. He wakes up in this big field. He's been having a nap at a picnic with Faith, his lady friend, Beth Bates. This field is so grim looking. Like the first thing I thought when I looked at it, I was like, are they in England? Like that's how sad this field looks. They're having like a romantic chat, but it turns out it was a hallucination because Trevor wakes up bolt upright in an operating theater struggling against the knockout gas. So we soon actually meet your friend and mine, Dr. Eck, Jeffrey Combs. Woo! I need like a Jeffrey Combs klaxon, like woo, woo, just like a big neon sign that goes off behind me. So this is Trevor's doctor, who's like immediately sinister. Dr. Eck is, I don't know how to describe this vibe he's going for. It is menacing, and so it's like, oh yeah, this is immediately the villain
and aloof. I feel like he's just like above it all and kind of insulted that Trevor is concerned.
That whole scene was very confusing. I just was like, I could never, like, the fact that he gets convinced to lay back down after he's like, I don't know where I am. What are you guys doing? You're shaving my head. You're going to be in my head. What's happening? And the doctor's kind of just like, yeah, man, it's all cool. You can either fight it, or if you laid back down and took the gas, you won't be fighting anymore. Yeah. You'll be fine.
Seamless logic.
He does it. I'm just like, oh, okay.
Well, you are doctors, and doctors have never made a mistake before.
Never.
No. So we cut to like a satanic ritual, which is pretty sharp turn. Trevor's tied up. There's a pentagram on the ground. Faith is there. She's chanting very satanically. She has a big book, and this is my favorite thing in this movie. She has a big like Necronomicon style book, and the spine of the book turns into a dagger.
I really appreciated that visual imagery.
What a great prop. It just like clips, it like you pull the spine out of the book and clip it off and it becomes like a knife. I'm like, ooh.
I think I was really concerned. I wasn't paying attention because I was looking at, is that dirt? Is he on dirt? Is that velvet? Is that dirt? Is that velvet? That was my dilemma at the time.
Why did that worry you?
I don't
know. We're over here appreciating this beautiful dagger that is part of this satanic book, and Danielle's worried about the flooring.
Yeah.
Danielle's like, I don't want him to get dirty.
Yeah.
Well, I think that's also what was driving me, was like, okay, are we going into like sexual fantasies here, or is this like legit? He's in a predicament, like.
Well, either way, he's in a predicament. Like this amps up pretty quickly. Pretty soon she gets naked, which we're going to see more of throughout the film. And she tries to stab him. And something happens here again, which is like, I just couldn't quite tell, not only because of the way it was filmed, but a lot of the visual effects kind of make it confusing. And it's like, I think Faith gets like sucked into the book.
I was confused because after he stabs her, after she gets in the circle and we're trying to figure out she gets sucked, he like acts like nothing happened. He lights a match without really lighting it. It's like magic. And I'm thinking to myself, I thought she possessed him. Like they switched, she went in, it got sucked inside of him. So it might've been the book. I was very confused.
Yeah,
but because they talk about later how he was supposed to go into her, but then she went into him.
Right. Yeah.
It was all
there's a lot of discussion on possession and curses and rituals. At the end of this scene, Trevor, he wakes up in like a normal room in some den and he's got blood on his hands. He calls the cops. He says there's been a murder because Faith is dead on the ground with a spooky knife inside of her. So that's just where we're going. Faith is dead. So we assume, Trevor's crazy. Okay, that's where the film's going. Back in the hospital, we meet two fabulous little cameos. We've got Alice Cooper.
Random.
He's only in it for this scene. He plays a patient that apparently keeps escaping. He's been brought in by Dr. Coffee, Ted Raimi. Always fun to see Ted Raimi.
Yes.
Dr. Eck appears. He's wearing a white suit and a red cravat and a natty little waistcoat. It's an interesting color palette. Red and white. There's a lot of red and white in this movie. And
yeah. He looked like a Southern gentleman who was about to take a walk on the plantation. Like, that's the vibes I got. Like, for sure, I thought he was going to get a glass of sweet tea any second.
Yeah. a mint julep.
Yes.
Yeah.
100%.
So it turns out that Dr. Eck and Dr. Coffee are going to be working together. So for the rest of the movie, Dr. Coffee is just like shadowing Dr. Eck, basically.
But the way they treated him when he came in was super weird. Like he brought in the escaped patient, but then the nurses and the staff were treating him as if he too was an escaped patient. And I was just like, well, don't you know your patients?
Yeah.
To be able to say who's escaped or not?
Yeah, because
he's going to drug him and everything.
He's like, oh, I meant to meet Dr. Eck. It's like, oh, well, all the patients say that. He must be crazy.
The hospital looked like a strip mall. It didn't look like a facility.
Mm-hmm. Well, you would be correct because the hospital location that they film in is an abandoned hospital in Downey, California.
Interesting.
I know my abandoned hospitals.
I can spot an abandoned hospital a mile away. So Dr. Eck tells Trevor that the year is actually 2004 and that he's been in a coma for 4 years. There's a fun sort of visual effect of Trevor seeing a bunch of psychiatric patients going into another ward, and then when the swinging doors like swing back, they suddenly disappear.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Like that's kind of fun. I don't know what the point of it was because it's not like it's a ghost hospital.
Yes.
Like, maybe the passing of time, like when he was in his coma, these were all the people that have come and gone. I don't know. I'm reaching.
Yeah, you have to make assumptions because it's not clear. Yeah. I think they were just like, here's a fun visual effect we want to do, and it doesn't matter that it's not relevant to the plot. Trevor is thankfully a little bit charmed by Dr. Eck, and he tells him that he is in a hospice for the criminally insane. And also Jeff does the thing that Trevor did earlier, which is lighting the match with magic.
Right,
basically.
Right.
I don't know if that was a practical effect or if it was like CGI or something. I think it looks good. I think it's fun.
Yeah.
So Dr. Eck tells Trevor what happened. He tells him that he killed Faith, his fiance. Eck is also pretty keen on getting the big spooky book.
It's super weird too because the book itself, like, I always find it interesting in most witchcraft movies and shows that usually those books are knowledge that's been passed down and it's old. But it feels like, was Trevor like writing the book himself?
It's because there's actually a couple of times in the book where in the movie where there's some line where it's like Trevor's writing the book or I've written this book. It's like, wait, so you wrote it and you wrote the rituals and then you read the rituals? I don't know.
Like, is he channeling? Is someone speaking through him to write this book?
So Eck tells him that he's going to send him to the House of Love, which is just this big house where people go to heal, reintegrate into society, get therapy. We meet the House of Love's owner, Dr. Thalama, played by Wendy Roby, who was Nadine in the original Twin Peaks.
Oh. And she was mother in People Under the Stairs.
Yes,
what I recognize her from.
Yeah, I was
Don't even get me started.
That's also another movie I really love that Danielle refuses to watch.
I'm not doing it. I'm not doing it.
Yeah,
I have to lose a bet.
Yep, that was the next note I had. That movie is very fun. I highly recommend it. The color, the palette in this house is so strange. Like there's a lot of primary colors, but then also a lot of pastels.
Yes.
Yeah.
I actually was very vibing with the colors.
And even down to the characters' outfits, it was very color blocked.
Yeah, especially the room where they spend the most amount of time, which is like the group room, the games room, I think it's called. Like there's lots of color in it in a way that's, really striking. It wasn't bad. It was just notable. Especially because it's like a big old house. And so you don't expect it to be decorated in this way.
No, yeah.
It almost feels like in the same way Saw is reminiscent of certain music video types. This also felt like a music video set where everything's like brighter and larger than life.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, true.
It reminded me of But I'm a Cheerleader in some parts, how with the pastels that they have.
Yes.
Yeah. There's also a lot of taxidermy, which seems to like clash with that a bit. So at the House of Love, we meet Amy, played by Shannon Hart Cleary, as well as Ronald, played by Jerry Hawk. He wears an alligator puppet on his hand. But most importantly, we meet Douglas, Seth Green. Yay!
Yay!
Seth Green Claxon. Yay!
And I was so excited because I said he's going to save the movie for us.
He did what he could.
Well, yeah. The first thing Seth Green does is offer him some homemade gum.
Yes.
Oh my God.
Which is great. Like throughout this whole movie, Seth Green is so much fun. Like he
really is. The choices, I'm assuming he made with his character, because the writing seems kind of fast and loose.
Yeah.
But it seems like some of the choices that he made with his character were really interesting and really fun. And I think that is also what sets him apart from the rest of this cast.
The script has some interesting moments. Like there was definitely a few little speeches and things here and there where I was like, that's kind of fun or interesting.
Yeah.
But for the most part, I think it was just the story itself was too convoluted, too confusing. So they had to keep writing themselves exits from scenes because there was no like fluid way of getting out of this tangent that they've gone down. Just too many ideas, frankly.
It felt like improv. It felt like they did an improv movie and ended where they ended.
Yeah. It was like, all right, give me a location. Abandoned hospital.
Brightly colored community gathering room.
Yep. Give me a job. Alligator puppet.
Yes.
We also meet Liz, played by Nancy Wolfe, who we don't meet as much, but she is important to the story. Dr. Eck and Dr. Coffee are in like a control room and they're watching a bunch of hidden cameras. And it's all for Trevor, who apparently has schizophrenia. The entire purpose of his experiment is very confusing because sometimes he seems to have good intentions where he's like, we're going to bring him back to sanity. But then other times he's very obviously been corrupted by whatever this experiment is. Or maybe he just wants him to confess to the murder. It's not clear. The point is, I like watching Jeffrey Combs and Ted Raimi hanging out together, having a chat.
Yes. And I kind of was like, does he really have schizophrenia, or is this what we're just telling Dr. Coffee so he doesn't get suspicious?
Even though as soon as he walked in, everything was suspicious.
I was like, I don't buy the schizophrenia, especially because we want the spooky magic book and we're just a creepy doctor in general. I don't know. It was just, there were layers to the confusion.
Oh yeah. It was a confusing lasagna.
It is.
So when we cut back to the games room, Douglas is trying to move a spoon with his mind, which is quite fun. And Amy seems to have taken a shine to Trevor, which is really going to come back to bite him in the ass later.
Yes.
One of my favorite quotes in this movie is,
"You seem okay. I do, don't I?"
Putting on that Seth Green charm.
He's so charming. Oh my God.
So charming.
No wonder I had such a crush on him. I was going to say when I was 13, but I would say since I was 13.
Yes.
Yeah. Pretty soon we meet, I would say, the greatest character in the film, which is the attic.
Yes.
But I don't know if that was dirt, sand. Sorry, I know it seems like I'm obsessed with, but
dirt and sand are so similar.
But it just was so much of it. Like, I understand you're trying to convey that it is dusty up there, but that doesn't even make any sense. Like, there's not that much, no possible way there's that much dust that you're literally my mind, it's like an attic.
I love the things that Danielle hyper focuses on in movies.
The real attic expedition is in Danielle's mind.
Exactly.
So Trevor goes up to the attic because he hears like a banging, and it seems to be coming from a big trunk, like a steamer trunk. And he gets sucked into it, but then it's just a dream, I guess. Probably not important. Again, was it a dream? I guess, but then it also could have been real.
If we're already, what the movie poses is we might already be in his subconscious. So then are we watching him go further into his subconscious?
I thought all the people in the house were his different personalities in his brain trying to protect him from learning the truth.
Oh,
yeah. For a moment, it felt like Identity. Spoiler alert if you haven't seen that movie. But that's kind of what it felt like for a minute. I was like, okay, I can get on board with this.
Well, yeah, and especially because they say he's schizophrenic. And so the audience is actually like, here's what I have been led by media to know what schizophrenia is like.
Exactly.
But he did not showcase any sign. Like, he was the calmest, most rational person in that house from jump. He had no erratic behavior, so it was just like
Douglas does try to kiss Trevor, which I was like, oh, all right.
And not just a lean, it was a grab, the head grab as well.
Yeah.
I was like, okay,
right.
This is about to get interesting. And he didn't let him kiss him. I was like, this is pointless.
Oh, boring.
Well, and then we'll get to it later, but at the end of the movie, when Faith is trying to say that she's all these different characters, I'm like, oh, well, it would have made sense for Seth Green to try and kiss him if it really was Faith, but was that really where we were going?
Yeah.
It was
I don't think
very
she was
confusing.
I don't think she was him at this point in the movie. Yeah. I think he just wanted to kiss Trevor, which so did I. Like, I was like, there's two attractive men in a scene. Kiss. Yes. Kiss.
We're here for it.
I threw my napkin at the screen and said, boo.
Boo. So he tells her that Amy is in the House of Love because she's a rape fantasist who apparently falsely accuses men of sexual assault.
Only a man would write that bullshit fiction.
Yeah.
That's it.
I don't know what the overall point of having that as her quote unquote condition in the house. I mean, it does come up again, but it wasn't integral to the story.
No, and it could have very been easily like she's a sex addict. Like, why did we have to go?
I think it was just like some weird purpose to just excuse them having sex like after a day. When
he also explains that the Liz character that we met before writes obsessively, and Trevor can always hear the typewriter coming from her room. He says, Douglas says that Liz thinks she's writing the world and everything happening in it, and that if she stops writing, the world will cease to exist. I mean, that's like a fun idea for a film all on its own.
It really is.
Yeah. I want to hear more about Liz. She sounds interesting.
It's very reminiscent of what's the movie I Have to Kill Harold Crick?
Oh, Stranger Than Fiction.
Yes. That was like, I could get on board with a movie that has like that kind of premise that you're writing your story.
Yeah.
We spend a little bit of time with Ronald, the alligator guy. He's very afraid. The alligator is called the Professor. The alligator and Ronald tell him that Dr. Thalama arrived at the house with the spooky book from earlier. Make of that what you will. Again, needlessly confusing items being thrown into this big fire. My favorite bit of this scene, and it doesn't really work as an audio, so I'm not going to put the clip, but there's a great bit where the puppet interrupts Ronald talking, and Trevor is like, "Let him finish."
Yes.
That was like a fun moment of like genuine comedy in this movie, because like for the most part it's quite like, you know, grim and thrillery and a lot of stuff like, well, what are you going to do, man?
I 100% thought this was a comedy.
Whether or not they intended it to be.
Yes.
There's some throwaway lines that are just, they made me chuckle.
Oh yeah.
I'm like,
him offering the gum was very funny.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, at least the actors were attempting to have as much fun as they could making
Yes. There was some levity to it for sure.
Another confusing element, and this is all going to be confusing. Dr. Eck tells Dr. Coffee, it's not just Trevor's mind I'm concerned with, it's his soul. Like, what does that mean now? Are you a priest? Like, you were a doctor 5 minutes ago?
Are you witchcraft? Are you doctor?
Are you human? Are you dancer? Like, what's going on?
He was just a really concerned doctor. He was a holistic doctor. That's what it was.
Oh, okay.
Sure.
If we're just throwing things out there, yeah, agree.
Oh yeah. I bet he was a naturopath as well, and you know, mixing up ointments for him and such.
Yeah, and the needles were all acupuncture.
Yeah,
not drugs.
We couldn't actually see, but he was playing very relaxing music constantly in the background.
It was like a spa. Trevor was just at a spa.
Hey, look,
a retreat.
if there isn't like a spa retreat called the House of Love, that is a wasted opportunity.
Yes,
it really is.
So Trevor goes to visit Amy in her room. The walls are covered with like childlike drawings, like covered. Yeah. They make out. Trevor is trying to ask her why she's at the House of Love. I will say the most notable thing about this scene, apart from the gratuitous fucking in a second, is the amazing dress she's wearing in this scene.
Oh, it was awesome.
Gorgeous. It's like
good outfits.
70s style pastel dress. I'll post a screen cap because it's great. If anyone knows where I can get something like that, let me know. But yeah, they fuck, obviously. So
the way that they had sex was, no one could be enjoying this. I know it's fake.
What about it? What about it did you find not enjoyable?
Just the rhythm of the motions were just like very
jackhammery.
Yes. Mm-hmm. I mean, I guess somebody enjoys that. I don't know who.
There's something for everybody. Don't yuck anyone's yum.
Yeah, you're right.
We do find out that Trevor and Amy having sex was not, quote, part of the script. So it obviously wasn't planned as part of the experiment that is happening in this film. So later, of course, Amy goes to Dr. Thalama and accuses Trevor. And Trevor has a bunch of fucked up dreams.
Right.
And then everyone in the house wakes up to find Ronald is dead and his puppet hand is chopped off. We don't see the puppet again either. So someone took it.
He knew too much.
The puppet knew too much.
Yeah. So there is...
It's at the bottom of a lake somewhere. Yeah. Cemented with tiny cinder blocks.
Yeah. Putting them in some cement shoes.
Yes.
Yeah. So there's the following scene is one of the more visually interesting. It's Douglas and Trevor in, you know, the brightly colored pastel-y games room. And I guess they're discussing insanity, paranoia, what's happening in this house, what's going on. Here's just a fun clip of basically Douglas's theories on paranoia.
Healthy paranoia. It's debatable, like how far you should take it or how much you should talk about it. Now, I'll point this out to you, and you think about it however you want, but you don't ever mention it again, because when you talk about it, you give it power inside your mind. Do you follow me? Could you just give me a straight answer? Just one straight answer. Okay, straight up then. No one that you ever knew, or you loved, or that loved you, or that you cared about, or anyone who was ever anything to you that made you think that they might be as real as you are, ever proved that the rest of us aren't all in it together against you. The big secret, I don't care who you're thinking might be an exception. They aren't, and you will never know. Now, I could tell you that all 6 billion of the rest of us are out to get you. It's far-fetched for sure, but the chances are just as good as any other illusion you ever needed. Now, I don't talk about it, because when you talk about it, you just make it worse, but I think about it a lot. And now so will you, because it is in you now, and it has a mind and a will of its own, if any idea ever did. And you won't ever forget it.
Yeah, I love the way the camera's following them in this, the way like they're walking around and the camera's like following them as they walk around. I thought that was quite effective.
And I liked his theory. It was a pretty good part of the movie.
There's also this clip about why Douglas is there.
But you still don't know why I'm in here.
Oh, sure I do. You're working for them. You're the guy I'm supposed to trust enough to confide in.
No, Trevor, I cut my testicles off with a paring knife when they kicked me out of the Pink Floyd.
So that's why, if you were wondering.
Yeah. The way he did it was so seamless too, like weren't ready for him to say that at all. It felt like he like improvised that, like it wasn't in the script. He did a line and they decided to keep it because it wasn't, gonna hurt or anything for the movie.
Well, yeah, because they would have been like, look, just come up with something that's really strange about like why this character could possibly be here. Like it doesn't have to be something serious like murder. It has to be something a bit sillier. So Trevor and Douglas are in Douglas's room. So Trevor does the lighting the match thing that Dr. Eck did earlier. So he's magic as well, I guess. They also talk about having the same nightmares about the trunk in the attic.
Right.
And that was confusing because it just didn't make sense for...
Especially after we've seen everything. So it still doesn't confirm what the hell's going on, because it would have made sense if everything was in his mind, right? That character would know about his dreams. It didn't make any sense.
No. So Douglas and Trevor decide to go into the attic anyway. And Trevor can hear Faith screaming from the trunk. Douglas is telling him he's crazy. And this scene, I mean, visually it's interesting because I guess we're meant to be like, oh, the trunk is his brain. When Douglas is kicking the trunk, Trevor can feel it in his head, like he's getting kicked in the head. Right. So we're like, okay, is this a metaphor or is it literally his brain? What do you want from me?
It felt like once they opened the trunk, his memories, which are sitting in the trunk, would reunite with him and he would know what was going on. That's what I naturally assumed.
Yes.
At some point when that whole trunk scene, doesn't Trevor just wake back up in his room again?
Yep.
That's how that scene ends.
It's no answers.
Yeah. Trevor hears,
oh my God. I'm so sorry.
What?
I got so scared because I saw men behind me in my picture. I was like, who's in my house?
From the picture you put there as your background that has been there the whole time.
I'm so sorry.
Why are there doctors in my house?
All right, I'm back. I am so sorry.
I'll take it. Hang on. I'm just gonna take a screen cap now. Hang on.
It was this one.
So funny.
This one in particular.
Yeah.
He was the one.
He's
Officer,
creepy.
It was him.
He's creepy. Hang on.
And isn't there just a solid wall behind you, Danielle?
Yes.
She's not even in the middle of a room where someone could walk behind her.
Logically, it doesn't make sense. Okay.
Those creepy doctors, they can get in anyway.
Anywhere.
They really can.
Anywhere.
They're looking for your brain trunk. They're going to open your brain trunk, Danielle. Get the
And
precious
I'll tell you
memories.
this, my attic has no sand or dust.
Yep. Neither does my basement.
Ooh. Bada bing.
Yeah. I don't like that. I don't like that joke. I don't want to. just as an aside, that is such a huge novelty for Australians because we don't have attics or basements, like at all.
We don't really have them here in Florida either because we're at sea level. We do have some attics, but they're more of a crawl space. It's not like in New England where you have like this beautiful attic space. And
we're going to find like antiques that the previous owner left. It's like, old Christmas decoration someone shoved way in the corner.
I don't know about that, but in my attic, I did find a Christmas tree and that was a prize.
I was expecting something a lot more menacing. Like if I go up into an attic, I expect to find like evidence of a murder.
Yes.
No.
Or just like a tiny room where a child was kept captive.
Yeah.
Or a flowers in the attic situation.
Exactly.
Yeah. If I go up into an attic, I want to find like, an old journal, maybe a piano that starts playing by itself.
Yes.
That's what I want.
Again, as a Black woman, I do not wish for any of those things. I got exactly what I needed and wanted out of my attic, which is a busted ass Charlie Brown Christmas tree I used for 3 years and threw it away. And thank you very much.
Free Christmas tree.
Yes.
Yes.
Can't go wrong.
So Trevor hears some like not great noises coming from Liz's room and he goes in and she's dead. Bye, Liz.
She was nailed to the door.
Yeah. He checks the paper in the typewriter that she's apparently been typing on. And he's like, it's a setup. These stories are mine. But I have no idea how he could read anything because the paper is literally so covered in blood that like you can't see. Like it's a weird prop because it's literally just red paper. Anyway, Trevor's breaking down a bit. He's not having a super great time.
No.
He dreams about Faith during an operation. She says that he has to finish what he started. There's a whole sequence of Faith taking Trevor through the house and through like his memory of the ritual and stuff. And again, I'm like, is this the operation that he had at the start or is this another operation?
Yeah, it was very confusing. She looks like she's looking for the book as well. And she's telling him that she doesn't have time as if someone is preventing her from really being there for long.
Well, importantly, Dr. Eck has these adorable 2 peroxide blonde twins who man his computers.
Yes.
They're great. I wanted them more. They're weird.
They were very Weasley-like.
They're like horror Jedward. I'm assuming you guys didn't get Jedward there.
We don't.
Okay. Well, Jedward were this British twins who were like pop singers. And I think they were on like one of those British talent shows. If you Google image them, they're very strange looking, but they're adorable in a very creepy way. So Dr. Coffee doesn't think much of Dr. Eck's experiment. Here's a little clip of Dr. Eck chewing out Dr. Coffee.
New possibilities are always presenting themselves.
The very least I can say with regards to what I have just seen is that some things require privacy in the name of decency. Do you understand the concept of decency at all?
Oh, decency, I understand. Privacy's a myth, and I have a prescription.
Your methods are questionable, Dr. Eck, and the results, I am not quite certain, are detrimental to your patient.
I see.
Where are you going?
I'm going to talk to him.
Oh, that will do a lot of good, I'm sure.
Dr. Coffey, I'm on the brink of perfecting a universal treatment for every mental illness ever suffered. Your concerns are petty and small. Whatever Trevor may feel now, he will thank me once he's been perfected.
We go back in another flashback or a memory regression or a hallucination. Who the fuck knows? But we go back to Faith and Trevor on their weird British picnic. There's a bit where Trevor says, "Kiss me," and Faith says, "Let's buy a house."
Yes. That escalated quickly.
Very quickly.
Oh, I don't know. I just want to make out in this field. You want to buy a house. Put the brakes on, love. But they do buy a house, which is the House of Love. That's their house. All right.
That he didn't recognize when he was dropped off.
He said it felt familiar.
But I think somewhere at the start, he says something about how he just has zero memories of like anything before he woke up. So, again, not clear. And it jumps in and out of Trevor's flashbacks, imaginings, reality. But importantly, we get another gratuitous sex scene. This time it's Trevor and Faith fucking in his imagination, but also in the ritual. Apparently the ritual was meant to put them in the same body.
At points during that scene, it almost felt, just from Faith's dialogue, that it was almost the doctor that was like putting these images in Trevor's brain to try and convince him to tell him where the book was. Like, it was very
But at
confusing.
one point, when the doctor was watching him in whatever state he was in and saw him, he heard him say Faith and was talking to Faith, and the doctor said, interesting. So it almost seemed like it was a surprise to the doctor as well. So I was like, what's going on? Who knows what's...
But then we have a repeat, basically the same scene of the introduction to the House of Love. So they drop him off, and, Dr. Thalama introduces herself again, and he's like, wait, haven't we already met? And she's like, welcome to the House of Love.
Right.
And so we're like, what? Why are they doing it again? What's happening? Please save me. We get a bit of a diversion because he finds a carton of milk in the fridge that has the year 2000 on it.
Now we know if we ever get scammed into a time travel situation or a coma situation, we check our milk.
Yes.
To know the date.
The milk is what grounds us in reality.
Yes.
Oh, yeah. You know how sometimes you wake up in the middle of the night and you're a bit confused, you've had like a really intense dream and stuff. And the only thing that really brings you back to reality is checking your milk. It's like, oh, it is the 4th of August. I'm okay now.
Yes.
I also, it's very sloppy on their part if they're trying to convince this character that it's 2004 and they leave the milk in there that has the date on it.
But it's one of those details that you wouldn't think about. That is probably one of the cooler details in the movie, because it is definitely something that they wouldn't have thought about to remove from the house.
No, and it's good as a way of propelling the plot forward, because now he's aware of the conspiracy.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, which he goes to Amy to confront about it. Amy reveals that her name is Karen and that the experiment has gotten way out of control and that he was, quote, supposed to get better. And again, apparently them fucking wasn't in the script. She just liked him.
Yeah, because he does ask her, why did you say I raped you? Which, good question, Trevor.
Yeah, it's so he's now propelled by the idea that something is happening. Dr. Eck must be behind it. And how am I going to fix it? This is just a fun little clip of Ted Raimi chewing out Dr. Eck a little bit for the very unethical experiment he's doing.
I am disillusioned.
Oh, you're disillusioned.
Oh, yes. Thoroughly disillusioned.
I just didn't understand how it took him this long to
realize.
After watching, he's watched all of this stuff happen, and how is it now? This is the breaking point for you?
From the outset, it should have been seen as a hugely unethical, cruel, and strange experiment. Eck threatens Dr. Coffey with a needle. That's quite fun. Dr. Eck's getting a lot more actively hostile here.
Mm-hmm.
Trevor goes to confront the group. He's trying to get Dr. Eck to listen because he's aware now that there's cameras and stuff. But Eck is too busy monologuing to Coffey. Classic villain stuff of explaining the whole plan.
Yeah, explaining nothing.
Yeah. Well, he has a little speech which is quite fun about sort of the intersection of science and magic, which is quite fun, which is this.
Power of the old ones. The dark forces, if you will. I scientist would never consider the question of good and evil. But to an empirical mind, the truth is simply the truth if you could prove it. Facts have no morals, they just are. And the same scientist just dismisses outright very notion of magic. But what is magic, Doctor? Left-handed, right, black or white? What is magic but a science that is too esoteric for the modern scientific methods to prove? I mean, after all science was considered magic. 500 years ago, I would have burned us both.
Magic with a K.
Magic with a K. Yes. They do stipulate that in this. Douglas goes to Trevor to lay it all out for him. Douglas is getting pretty creeped out by Trevor. Like, Trevor's turning to be a bit more like hostile, a bit creepy. Unfortunately, Dr. Eck sticks Coffee with the needle and knocks him out. And then he calls the staff and tells them that there's an escapee who needs to go back to the ward. Rude.
Poor Dr. Coffee. He was just showing up for a day at work.
Yeah.
And got roped into this magic existential.
I don't feel sorry for him.
Experiment.
I don't, because there was a lot of signs for Homeboy to dip.
Yeah, I also wasn't entirely sure. There is a scene where Dr. Eck and Dr. Coffee are in the control room, and Dr. Eck starts shooting himself up with something. I don't know what kind of drug it was meant to be. He's injecting something into himself.
Was that like to get him closer to Trevor's psyche? Like, I was just trying to make some connection to anything. Like, oh, if he injects himself with this, it opens his mind, so then he can like do a deep dive into Trevor's brain to figure out where the book is.
I just said, he a drug addict.
Yeah.
It could be very surface.
And literally, that's all it could be, because if you don't give me a definition, explanation, or anything, that's all I'm left with.
It's so frustrating to watch a movie like this, because it sort of makes you feel a bit dumb. Like, I don't know, like this was just my experience of where I was watching it, and I'm like, is this a confusing movie or am I dumb?
Yeah. Oh, no, like, Lisa, I did not have that feeling at all. I knew it was dumb.
Okay, good.
I knew it was not me.
All right.
And really, truly at the beginning, probably the first 15, 20 minutes, I was like into it. I'm like, okay, this is going to go somewhere. Like, this is a sleeper that we haven't known
we've
about.
All missed out on the attic expeditions.
And then it just hard right turn.
Yeah. By the end, I knew that the thing I was going to say was this: we watched this movie so you didn't have to.
Yes.
Yeah.
If I didn't have to do it for the podcast, I would have stopped it very early on and would not have finished it. I would have never thought about it again, and I would have gone about my business. But for the love of you, Lisa, I finished that damn movie.
Yes.
I so appreciate your dedication to this. So Douglas goes to Liz's room and he's asking for like the typewriter with the bloody paper. As far as I can tell, he just needs it to knock Dr. Thalama out in the head. I feel like he could have done that with anything.
At this point, all of them have expressed that they're actors. And when he was having his dialogue where the doctor wasn't paying attention, or his monologue, he explains that he's in on the gig. Like, he knows all of it is fake. And so at that point, they've all decided that they're not going to continue. And so when he asked for the typewriter, she was like, oh, you mean the original one? And she brings out, I guess, his typewriter that he wrote the book on. I was just still confused as to why that was.
Did Dr. Eck do some sort of like shock treatments and like implant these false memories into Trevor's brain so that he had this?
They said something about implants in his brain at some point, I thought, unless I made that up. But you know what? The funny thing is, whenever I see some movie this where I like absolutely think it's the worst, I always find that there's some subset of people who obsess about the movie and love it. So I want to know, are there the Attic Expedition superfans somewhere that can explain what the hell just happened?
Yes, I would really hope that there are some people who maybe listen to this and they're like, I can't believe these idiots didn't get this movie. Like, I actually don't mind being mansplained to after this, because any explanation would be good, even if it's mansplaining. Like,
like, did someone do a college paper on the attic expedition?
I'm doing my PhD. This I think is the scene that your background is based on, Danielle, where he wakes up during brain surgery. Very upsetting. So he kills Amy / Karen. He's on a bit of a rampage now.
Mm-hmm.
Douglas kills a couple of psych nurses who came to get the escapee that Dr. Eck sent for. So Liz and Ronald escape. They just disappear. And now it turns out that Faith has possessed Douglas's body. So now they're going to kill Douglas. They're going to kill Trevor via Douglas, I guess.
Okay. This is where I shine right now.
Okay, go on.
Once he realizes that Faith is in his body, he like runs. First of all, dude, you're like almost a foot taller and in size bigger than Seth Green's character. Why are you running? And then he does all this stuff to get away from his character, and then at the end he just comes and knocks him out anyway. So I'm just like, you could have taken him. What was this?
The visual of Douglas possessed by Faith saying, I'm gonna kill you when I bash in this door, and then him doing his best and it still looks like mediocre swinging with a baton. And I'm like, I mean, that guy could have just taken a nap in that room for, like, Seth Green was never going to knock that door down.
No.
Look, we love Seth Green. He's a short king, but he's not like an action hero.
No, not at all. And
it wasn't like possession equaled superpowers.
Right. I was just like, this was the answer. I would have possessed one of the guys from the psych ward or whatever, one of the orderly guys that came. They were a lot bigger and they had weapons. Like, this made no sense. And then that whole thought process that Trevor had that, oh, I know Faith will show up in the end because she's gonna want to fuck me one more time. Who says this? I know a man
very confident.
Very confident. And then Douglas as Faith was like, I'm not gonna fuck you. I decided I'm gonna kill you.
Trevor does kill Douglas / Faith with the spooky dagger, which is there's that scene's kind of interesting because, you know, Seth Green is, you know, sort of playing Faith through him. You know, he's kind of like, oh, kiss me before I die and stuff like that. Like it's very good on his part. I mean, Seth Green is obviously one of the better actors in this piece, just in general.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then we're back at the fucking beginning. Like it goes back to the scene, like to the scene where we're introduced to Trevor, like when he's in the psych ward again. And I'm like, okay, so did it happen again? Or is it in his mind?
Are we just on a loop until the doctor gets the outcome that he wants?
I don't know, because the scene was the same, but it was different in the sense that the two nurses at the nurses station waiting for him to wake up, and they have their dialogue gives kind of an aura that Trevor's character is dangerous and scary. They're like, did you read the report? But the second nurse says that she's going on her break before Trevor wakes up the second time around, but the first time around, she says it as soon as he wakes up and gets up. So I was just like, okay, it's definitely not the same, but it's the same.
Well, the main difference I noticed is that in the first time we see Trevor in the psych ward, the nurse says he'll never wake up.
Yeah.
And then Trevor wakes up. And then the second time we see the same scene, she says he'll never wake up, and he doesn't. Yeah, I'm assuming that that's what Eck is doing. He's just performing the same experiment over and over again until he gets what he wants. And it's like, we're just going to keep removing his memories. Don't know how you do that physically out of the brain, but I'm not a doctor.
Pensive.
Presumably, Dr. Eck got what he want, though, because there's a scene where we see Dr. Eck on the phone, presumably with, I don't know, investors in the experiment or something.
Right.
And he says he's got the book now. So the film ends with Trevor being the one who is banging from inside the trunk. And then he himself opens the trunk and is pulled inside.
I kind of took that as, oh, his two halves are becoming one again. Like, but I don't know what two halves needed to become whole.
And the nerve of them to make it seem like some sort of jump scare or like, haha, nothing was answered.
Yeah.
Nothing. It was a mind fuck of a movie. And then the music choice during the credits, I was like, how quickly can I turn this off?
Yeah. Very unpleasant sounds over the credits that I was just like, oh, just turn it off. In terms of him going into the brain trunk, I just kind of took that as like, oh, his psyche is irreparably damaged, now.
He's not getting out of this.
Yeah, he's going to be trapped in this house, which is also in his mind, but it also might be a physical house. Who knows? But he's going to be trapped in this loop of remembering and not remembering and hallucinating and stuff. And it's basically his brain's a mess now. That's just what I took from it.
He just has to find the milk over and over. Remind himself.
So it's like worse, like Memento, but worse.
It's 50 First Dates.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yep.
I don't know. I feel like he was trying to make one of those twisted, campy horror movies, but also a psychological thriller.
It was like 4 movies in one.
Yeah.
And it couldn't decide what it wanted to be. And if he had just chosen any one of the 4, it would have been a fairly decent movie. You had a pretty good cast.
Yeah.
You just kept throwing things in there.
Yeah. I'm interested because obviously I can't speak for the screenwriter because he didn't obviously do very much else. But in terms of directing, I think that there's things in here that eventually proved very effective in other films he did. So 2007's Wizard of Gore that I mentioned earlier, that has a lot of similar elements to this that work quite well. Choices he made and design and that sort of trippy, upsetting feeling that it could often have. So I consider this as sort of like a stepping stone to a better film. Attic Expeditions is, I'm going to say, intriguing, but too confusing to be enjoyable.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's my tagline. Too many irons in the fire. Take some irons out of that fire.
I've seen worse.
Like at this point, I realized the other night, I think I've seen everything that Jeffrey Combs has done. I mean, apart from like, there's a lot of individual episodes of TV shows. Like I haven't seen every episode of Star Trek that he's done.
Right.
But in terms of films, I think I've seen every.
Oh, wow.
That's a weird accomplishment to have.
I feel like you need a little trophy or a medal.
Oh, I'll have to make one for myself.
Or like your email signature, you just have like
I've seen it all, baby. Jeffrey Combs.
I love a craft brewery. That's how we tour any new town we travel to. We immediately look up the craft breweries in town, and that's how we explore. We landed in Honolulu to get on a cruise, and we had like 3 hours to kill. And we're like, okay, where's the nearest craft brewery that we could go to? We're in like the beautiful island of Oahu, and we're sitting in like some shitty rundown.
That sounds like
brewery.
the most American thing I've ever heard in my life.
Yes.
Yeah. I don't like beer, so it's never.
I'm personally offended.
Sorry. You know what? The weird thing, I think it's a cultural thing too. I don't know a lot of African Americans that like beer. It's not
really.
Yeah, men will drink it, but women, Black women especially, we're not. I rarely see Black women drinking beer, and the only exceptions is usually if they've grown up in a white neighborhood.
So I failed you, Danielle?
No, not at all. Not at all.
So what would you normally drink otherwise?
And it's funny, I read an article about this, about how Black women's drinking habits in this country have changed quite a bit. We weren't, wine was not an accessible thing for Black people and Black women to definitely drink. It's just more recently become more accessible. So I do know, a lot of Black women drink wine, but definitely liquor, man.
Just give her some vodka. She's happy.
Vodka will fuck me up. Tequila. I could do tequila. I could do dark liquors, but
I used to drink a lot of like hard liquor when I was like 18, and now I'm just like, I just have a beer at the end of the day, like an old man coming back from the mines. So yeah, that's Attic Expeditions. It is definitely a movie.
There was a beginning, a middle, and an end.
It was definitely a talkie.
Yes,
we love those talkies.
If you're in for boobies, there's quite a few.
Oh yeah, and Bush, make no mistake.
Yes.
Yeah. Although, I don't know, I feel like that's become less and less important in a movie as, the internet is a thing. Like, it's why they don't make erotic thrillers anymore, because people have the internet.
Yeah.
Yeah, you don't need to go to the movies to see titties anymore. They're just everywhere anyway.
If you're looking for retro titties, that this is for you.
Throwback titties.
Yes.
Oh, the early 2000s feeling like a throwback makes me feel very old.
Yes, agreed.
One more, flashback cooter.
I love it. That's the name of our band, Danielle.
Well, pubic hair aside, well, thank you. It was nice to have some fellow Seth Green aficionados as well on.
Absolutely.
Because
I feel like the majority of movie podcasts are male led. I love when like three girls can get together and just talk about a movie and kind of dissect it and talk somewhat intelligently.
Oh yeah. I'm a scholar, don't you know? I have a podcast that makes me a film academic.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, it's also just it's nice when there is something else besides Jeffrey Combs in a movie to make it interesting. Because obviously, no matter what the movie is, I'm interested in watching Jeffrey Combs in it.
Yes,
he's my favorite guy. But it's nice when there are other actors in the film that are also doing something interesting.
But I think Seth Green is a character actor. Mm-hmm. He is not I know he's been a main character, but I think he actually does better when he is able to just be that supporting character.
Yes.
The idea of him being this character actor comes a lot in his voice work, because his voice work is so diverse. Like, yeah, he's great. And I think that Jeffrey Combs was doing something interesting with this character. He's a consummate professional. He does the role well. He's got his funny little cravat and his waistcoat. He's got a huge ashtray on his desk. It's massive. Yeah. It's like the size of a dinner plate. Yeah, he's terrifying in a movie that's meant to be terrifying.
He did a great job.
Yeah, he's great. We love him here at Reanimate's podcast, and when I say we, I mean me. It's just me. There is no team behind me. All right. Well, give me some plugs. Where can people find you and your podcast?
You can find us on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, and Facebook, all at No More Late Fees. Yeah, we do movies from 1995 to 2005. Very diverse.
Good bracket,
just because Jackie and I used to work at Blockbuster, so it's just that sweet spot of when we were in high school when we met, and also when we worked at Blockbuster in our college years. So it's just a really nostalgic time for us, and we've just been having a lot of fun.
It's just a nice chat each week with your best friend, and
we don't take ourselves seriously whatsoever. We are not like trying to be film experts. We are just giving the everyday just thought process of how these movies make us feel. We do like to compare the movies from when we originally saw them. We say our like 2K versions of ourselves, and we rate them and compare them to what it was like when we saw it originally to how we feel now. And that's been a really cool exercise because you realize how much your taste has changed or how much movies have changed over time. So that's been
fun.
Then
there's always those movies that are just, it doesn't matter how insane they are or how problematic they are. They just have that nostalgia for you and you can't not love them.
Yeah. There's a lot of movies from that time period where I was, voraciously going to video stores that I'm just like, I can't quit this movie. Like I saw it at such a pivotal point in my life where I'm like, I just love it. I wish I didn't, but I do. Can't Hardly Wait is not like that though, because that is a genuinely good movie. And,
Danielle has.
I will have no Can't Hardly Wait smack talk on my podcast.
It's not. I honestly still love the movie. I do. I think it's still a good movie. I found some plot holes and I identified them and we discussed. That was pretty much it.
There's no holes. It's a seamless.
I said
it is a seamless script.
If you like craft breweries and cat pictures,
excellent.
I'm at Lovey Smiley, LUVYSMILY on Instagram.
Great. So as usual, you can follow this podcast on so it's at Reanimates Pod on Instagram, at Reanimates Pod on Twitter as well, I believe. I can't believe I don't remember. That's ridiculous. Maybe my brain is in a trunk somewhere.
Maybe
that's
you
the
have
only
a trunk
explanation.
brain.
Yeah, that's why I have no memories of the social media I set up. And also Reanimates Podcast on Tumblr, and the episodes are also on YouTube. If you just look for Reanimates Pod, it'll be there. Yeah, sorry, I'm always trying to think of like something funny to go out on.
We struggle with this ourselves. We
I
don't
have like a tagline. I don't have like a tagline or anything. I usually just like to peter out on the conversation because I think that's funny.
Well, I mean, you just need to remember your social bubbles. As Jeffrey taught us in The Frighteners.
Well, I mean, a territorial bubble is so important in these days of COVID.
He's out there doing the Lord's work through visual media and medium.
Somehow he predicted the coronavirus epidemic. And here's why. In this essay, I will